3-0 over the Saints at the Hawthorns. But we're here to dissect the action from the game, and joining us again is Dean Hammond and Joe Prince-Wright. Gentlemen, we'll start off with your early thoughts on that game. Joe, let's come to you first. What did you make of it?
Pretty terrible. From a Saints perspective, I don't think we can sugarcoat that. The first half in particular was one of the worst first halves of the season, if not the worst. Defensively all over the place. Not quite sure where to start, but West Brom could have scored 5 or 6 in the first half. And after the comeback win against Burnley, it was quite a shock to see Saints come out like that. But it was very similar to the Burnley game. Started slowly, defensively, just couldn't get on the front foot. And it was very unlike Saints. There was no real pressure on the ball, no high pressing at all. And then, of course, they woke up a little bit around half time, and then started the second half were much better. But by that time, the damage had been done. So, a very poor display. West Brom deserved winners, of course, met them in a very good moment for them. They were very positive and full of confidence. But then there's a massive wake-up call for Saints, and probably the last thing they needed ahead of the FA Cup semi-final at the weekend, because Ralph Hasenhüttl will not be happy with that performance.
Yeah, Dean, Joe said it there, not the best preparation for that semi-final. What did you make of tonight?
I agree with everything Joe says. I think just disappointment, really, for the fact of the performance, and the result becomes from the performance, really. West Brom were good. Let's give some credit to West Brom. They were good. They had lots of energy. It looked like they put more importance on the game to try and win the game. It really mattered to them. Won second balls, done the basics very, very well. And Southampton just looked flat, really. Just couldn't get themselves going. And West Brom could have scored at will, really. The first goal, as we look, probably shouldn't have been disallowed. That was a warning sign. There was other opportunities for Southampton. And it became too free and flowing. There was no real structure to the game. And if you looked at the game, I was trying to dissect and analyse it a bit and trying to find out why it was happening. There was too many gaps between the units, too many gaps between the defence and the midfield, the strikers, and the pitch became too big. The two midfield players were playing on their own. It was almost like a 4-2-4. The wide players were playing too high and wide, weren't tracking their runners and weren't coming narrow to help the two midfield players. And they just got overrun. And the midfield battle is so important in any game. And West Brom won that convincingly tonight and deserved to win the game. So it's real disappointment and probably frustration leading up to such an important game on Sunday. But it's happened now. It's something you have to dust yourself down and move on from. I'm sure there'll be a few chosen words in the dressing room and a few home truths which need to be said, and you move on and forget about it. But a deserved victory from West Brom and just a really flat Southampton performance.
Dean mentioned Diagne's disallowed goal there, Joe. Apparently VAR was unable to draw a definitive line and so stuck to the on-field decision. How did you read that one?
I think the only person to have a worse night than Saints was VAR, because that was just, the reasoning you can understand is a technical hitch. I think the officials and VAR obviously are probably quite thankful that it didn't cost West Brom the win and it was a comfortable victory in the end for them. It's not been a good weekend or a good few days for VAR. It really boggled my mind to see that it was ruled out. From a Saints perspective, like Dean said, it was a massive let-off and something they didn't take heed of that warning early on. He was clearly onside when he scored. And obviously the issue was the camera angle couldn't pick up where his shoulder was because he's being blocked by another West Brom player. So that was the problem there. Unfortunate for West Brom, but they didn't let it impact their game at all. They just went from strength to strength, and hats off to them because they got their game plan spot on, were very confident. And right now you'd have to say they have all the momentum down in the bottom three. And, maybe they could save themselves. But VAR, another really strange day for that.
Well, the two goals that did count for West Brom in the first half both came from mistakes from a Southampton perspective. Dean, what did you make of them?
They did. They were forced errors from Southampton. The first one's really interesting and something that's probably very new to this season because obviously defenders can be within the box from a goal kick. And it was a strange decision from Fraser Forster to kick that ball long when the centre halves are so deep and no West Brom players pushing onto them. So it gave the centre half so much ground to make up. Lost the first header, lost the second header. Nathan Niles, which I thought was fantastic for West Brom all night, made an excellent run, wasn't tracked, pulled the ball back, and again a midfield runner in Pereira wasn't tracked, and it was a definite penalty. So the first goal, a few errors there that I think the Southampton players will be disappointed with, just poor decision making. And the second goal, good possession for Southampton. Danny Ings unfortunately tried to play a ball back to Bednarak, I think, gets intercepted. A really, really good cross, and Vestergaard just can't quite get to the ball, and it's a good finish by Phillips. But the warning signs were there. There was opportunities for West Brom. So I don't think Southampton can really have any arguments. But it's just frustrating because there are errors that could have been stopped or prevented, really, from the Southampton players. And I think that's where the disappointment comes in. West Brom were good and created opportunities, but the major moments within the game, the major goals, could have been prevented just from a little bit more concentration, I think, from Southampton.
Joe, the third goal was more against the run of play. Was that the crucial one for you? Because Southampton had played okay up until that point in the second half.
It was, Kenzie. I think, once that third goal went in, all hope of getting a point or maybe even another miraculous comeback, that ended. But Saints did start the second half really well. They looked more like themselves. They were high pressing, putting West Brom under a lot of pressure, and they were sitting deeper and deeper. And you thought, okay, if Saints get one early in the second half, then you could see a 2-2 or maybe like that comeback win. But yeah, great finish. Again, the defensive gaps, as Dean mentioned, midfield, it was too easy for Yokoslu to turn. Played the ball in, got a bit lucky. I don't think he meant to play that ball to Robinson, but it was a great finish. And again, too much space in behind for him just to run in between the centre-backs. So a lot of issues there for Saints to solve. And it wasn't like Southampton didn't create good openings. They had some good opportunities in and around the box with Ings, Redmond, Armstrong, got in some really good positions. But it was just, for me, a general lack of urgency, maybe taking an extra touch when they didn't need to, where as against Burnley and when they've been won games and been very good in other games this season, they've just been direct and just taking the shot early or being just a bit more positive. And you did feel like Saints were being a bit too tentative, taking that extra touch. And when they got into positions to score, West Brom always had another man that had already backed up the defender to close down that avenue. So yeah, West Brom were clinical and ruthless, and Saints were just a little bit sluggish on the ball all night long, and that kind of summed up the game.
Yeah, well, we did speak before the game about the excellent result that West Brom had against Chelsea last weekend, Dean. Was tonight just the wrong time to face them, or did Southampton just not do enough?
I'd say a bit of both, Steve, to be honest. I think West Brom are vastly improved. I think last weekend's result against Chelsea has given them a lot of confidence and belief in the fact that they could get out of the relegation zone, which didn't help, obviously, at Southampton. And Southampton just weren't at their best. Like Joe mentioned, they were just half a yard off the pace a little bit, taking maybe one or two more touches than necessary or usually would, and just didn't have that. I think that's a good word by Joe, the urgency. The urgency in the attack to potentially get a shot off, to play a 1-2, or the urgency to sense danger or get to the ball first or press the ball as a unit. I think it just looked a little bit more of a individual performances and not quite a team performance tonight. But West Brom were very, very good. I always like to look at that. The opposition were good. They wanted to win the game. They were played on the front foot, created a lot of opportunities, which you don't really think West Brom would, really, for the way they play. They're usually a team that sit very, very deep, try to defend, not concede, and then play on the break. But they had a game plan and executed it very well and deserved the win.
Joe, you said pre-match that West Brom's season rested on tonight's match. Where does that win leave them now, and what does it do for Southampton?
Well, for them, if you look at the table, they're obviously 8 points from safety, 7 games to go. It's a real boost. They had to win tonight, and now they play Leicester next in the Premier League, Villa and Wolves, and it's given them a lot of confidence going into those few games now that they can save themselves, because, as I mentioned, they have the momentum. Fulham are struggling now again. even Newcastle, you wouldn't bet on them getting many more wins between now and the end of the season. So, yeah, can't quite believe I'm saying this, but West Brom may actually have the edge when it comes to staying up. They're still a long way back, but as Dean knows, momentum means everything in football. And when you're playing well, confident, keeping a clean sheet tonight and scoring goals. I mean, they scored 8 goals in their last 2 games. That's good going, heading into a tough run of games to finish the season. But as for Saints, it's obviously status quo. Not going to get relegated. But now I think it's disappointing because hopes of a top 10 finish, I think, are really far-fetched. And yeah, again, it was, Dean said it as well, the urgency, the lack of desire almost at times tonight. Almost that the players were thinking about the weekend and trying maybe not to get injured to be in the FA Cup semi-final team. And I think you saw that in the performance tonight. And Ralph will not be happy with that at all. And some players probably played themselves out of the FA Cup semi-final team, I have to say. So for Saints, disappointing. They aren't going to go down, but it was kind of a big moment in the season in terms of which way it could swing from here on out. I think the best Saints can do is finish 11th or 12th now.
Well, speaking of the next match, we know tonight's result isn't going to do Southampton any favours when it comes to Sunday's match against Leicester. Dean, as a player, what needs to happen in the dressing room now or on the training pitch, just so we can kind of put this behind us and move on?
You need to speak about it. There's no hiding away from it. You need to have a meeting about it and discuss what's happened and why it's happened. There needs to be, you need to reflect on it 100%. But when you've done that, used to be a Nigel Atkins great saying, you need to draw a line under it and just forget about it and move on from it. And that's what needs to happen. And then you go into a week of training. It feels very different. It's a simple thing. It's very, very strange, but it feels different for an FA Cup build-up. The balls change in training. You change with different ball, train with different balls because there's FA Cup balls to Premier League balls. There's just a different feel from it. There's a bit of excitement. You can change and forget about the Premier League form. Southampton have been very, very good in the FA Cup, obviously, because they're in the FA Cup semi-final. So you need to discuss it. You need to vent what needs to be said, really, and then try to use it in a positive manner and try and get some energy out of it to motivate the players for the FA Cup semi-final. The good thing is that Leicester have come off a poor performance as well. So both teams going into the semi-final have had 2 poor performances between them in the Premier League. So a line needs to be drawn under it. You need to forget about it, but you need to remember it and gain some energy for it to take it into that game.
Well, Joe, all eyes do turn to Wembley now. Please give us a bit of positivity before then.
Well, on a positive note, I'll be there, so there'll at least be one in the press box. I'll be staying neutral in my role of NBC Sports. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Saints have a response. Like Dean said, the next few days, kind of work out what went wrong, and then move on very, very quickly from that. Because I think that's all you have to do. West Brom were good, Saints were bad. Does it mean much in the grand scheme of the season? No, but there has to be a reaction. And from a positive point of view, Leicester were equally as bad against West Ham in the first half, if not worse. So it may be a good time to play Leicester, especially with some of the issues with players being left out for them. A lot of question marks about their form in recent weeks. So it's not the end of the world for Saints. You've still got an FA Cup semi-final to look forward to. And as Dean mentioned, Saints have been very good in the FA Cup this season. For whatever reason, they've just been able to switch off any focus or any thoughts about the Premier League and focus fully on the Cup. And, they're 90 minutes away from an FA Cup final. So that's as positive as I'm going to get. And if you hear any cheers from the press box, it won't be me because I'll be staying very, very neutral.
Yeah, I love the positivity. Leicester have been equally as bad. Dean, we've obviously highlighted that Leicester aren't going into this game on Sunday in the best of form either. What are your early thoughts ahead of this one? Because it's a massive game for both teams.
Huge game for both teams. Leicester obviously have never won the competition. They've got to the semi-finals and finals before. I'm sure Brendan Rodgers will be looking to win a trophy. They're obviously in a good position in the league, 3rd place, but there's a bit of pressure on them now with the chasing pack. And Southampton, obviously we've mentioned before, have been brilliant in the FA Cup. So it's going to be a nervy game for both teams, I think, because there's so much now relying on it. Because I think the manager said that he's identified that he'd like to win the FA Cup this season. He's put a strong team out for every round, so he's identified that there could be an opportunity. And a one-off game at Wembley is always 50-50. I don't care who's playing. There will be nerves. I know there's not going to be a full house of 90,000 people there, but it's an FA Cup semi-final, so there will be some nerves. And it's all. I think this game's all about who starts best, because of the last two games for both teams. There will be a little bit of a hangover from it. There will be some nerves from it, and neither team in either fixture have started particularly well. So pretty even matched teams. Both teams look to win the games. Good attacking players, and I think it will come down to who defends the best will win the game.
Yeah, we're so looking forward to that one, aren't we? Well, Dean, Joe, thank you so much for joining us and for your fantastic insight as always. It was a disappointing end to the night in the Midlands, but we march on to Sunday's huge FA Cup semi-final clash against Leicester. Keep your eyes peeled for our coverage of that one. You don't want to miss it. But until then, have a great week and we'll see you at the weekend.